My daughter handed me eviction papers the day after her father's will was read. I'm Yvonne Wallace, 60 years old, and I raised an ungrateful Wharton MBA who thought her business degree made her better than the woman who welded steel for 38 years to pay for it. Simone thought that $465,000 house inheritance made her untouchable. Thought her fancy credential gave her the right to call me an embarrassing blue-collar relic who was ruining her image with her new boyfriend Derek. She had big plans for our family home. Modernizing it, she called it. Erasing every trace of me and turning it into something worthy of her consulting firm's social circle. What Simone didn't know was that she'd only seen will number 1, the simple one, the one that said the house goes to her when I die or when I'm ready to move out. See, there's something they don't teach you at Wharton Business School. They don't teach you to respect the hands that built everything you're standing on. They don't teach you that wisdom doesn't come from PowerPoint presentations. And they definitely don't teach you to check all the legal documents before you start celebrating your inheritance. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from, because Simone was about to learn that some lessons cost more than $225,000 in student loans. Let me show you how my own daughter treated me in those weeks after her father Raymond passed. Simone had moved back into our family home 6 months ago, said she needed time to save money and figure out her career path after Wharton. What she really needed was free rent while she impressed Derek Chen, her investment banker boyfriend who thought she came from money. It started small. She'd correct my speech at dinner. "Mom, it's ask, not ax. You sound uneducated." Always with that look. Always followed by maybe if you'd gone to college. Then came the text messages. I saw them on her phone one morning when she left it on the kitchen counter. Still stuck living with my mom for a few more weeks. Woman's a walking embarrassment with her work boots and oil-stained jeans. Can't wait to upgrade this situation. Upgrade this situation. That's what 32 years of raising her had become. A situation to be upgraded. The real disrespect started when Derek came over for the first time. Simone introduced me like I was the help. "This is Yvonne." She worked in automotive. Manual labor type stuff. Like 38 years of certified TIG welding, like the precision work that kept Detroit assembly lines running, like the problem solving that couldn't be Googled was something shameful. Derek asked what I did, being polite. Before I could answer, Simone jumped in. "Mom's retired now. She was a welder. Blue-collar work, you know." The way she said blue-collar sounded like an apology. Like the calloused hands that had paid for her Wharton MBA were evidence of failure instead of decades of skilled craftsmanship. But what really hurt was finding my photos taken down. Every picture of me in my welding gear, my union recognition awards, even the photo of Raymond and me at my retirement party 2 years ago. Gone. Replaced with Simone's Wharton diploma in a $380 custom frame hung right where our family portrait used to be. When I asked about it, she said, "Mom, I'm building a professional brand here. Derek's friends, his colleagues, they have certain expectations. I need this space to reflect who I'm becoming, not where I came from." Not where I came from. I was where she came from. Me and Raymond, working double shifts, him driving trucks while I welded at the Ford supplier plant, both of us making sure she had everything. New laptop for school. Study abroad program. Application fees for 6 different business schools. The $165,000 down payment on her Wharton tuition that came from the one patent I'd sold back in 1999. That patent. A specialized welding fixture I designed for aluminum body panel assembly. Took me 3 years of night classes and weekend prototyping. Ford bought it for $165,000. We could have bought a bigger house, taken a real vacation, saved for our retirement. Instead, we gave it all to Simone. "Education is the way out," Raymond used to say. "She'll never have to work with her hands like we did." Now those same hands she'd escaped from were an embarrassment. I found her one night in the garage going through my welding equipment, my Miller TIG welder that cost me $4,200 in 2003, my metal fabrication tools, my certification documents from the American Welding Society, 38 years of accumulated knowledge and skill hanging on pegboards and organized in labeled tool chests. "How much is all this junk worth?" she asked, not looking up from her phone where she was checking resale values. "I'm thinking we could clear out this garage, make it a home gym or something. Derek's really into fitness." Junk. 38 years of mastering a craft. Equipment that had earned every dollar that built her privileged life. Tools that represented problem-solving skills Wharton never taught. "More than you know, baby girl," I said quietly. That confused her. Simone was expecting an argument, maybe tears. She wasn't expecting calm. She definitely wasn't expecting me to start making phone calls of my own. Late at night, after she'd gone to bed, I'd sit in my garage workshop making those calls. Quiet conversations with Janet Wilson, our family attorney. Discussions about documents Simone hadn't seen yet. Documents that were about to teach my Wharton MBA daughter that some knowledge can't be bought with tuition money. It has to be earned with your hands. You need to understand what I was really facing. This wasn't just about a daughter being disrespectful. This was about losing everything Raymond and I had built over 40 years of marriage. The house Simone wanted to inherit wasn't just worth $465,000 like the appraisal said. The reality was much more complicated and much more desperate. 3 years ago, when Simone got her acceptance letter to Wharton, she was drowning in undergraduate debt, $95,000 from Howard University. The MBA program was going to cost another $240,000 for 2 years. Financial aid covered some, but we were looking at $180,000 out of pocket for her to finish. Raymond and I had $22,000 in savings. We owned the house free and clear, worth about $385,000 back then. We sat at this kitchen table, the same one where Simone now ate her catered lunches while talking on her phone, and made a decision that would change everything. We took out a reverse mortgage for $360,000, gave Simone $180,000 for Wharton, kept the rest as a safety cushion for emergencies. "She'll make it back 10 times over with that MBA," Raymond had said, signing the papers. "She'll take care of us when we're old. That's what family does." Raymond died 8 months after Simone graduated. Heart attack at 58, sudden and cruel. He never got to see her consulting job or meet Derek or watch her become the success he'd sacrificed everything for. And now here she was, calling his workshop junk and planning to erase every memory of him from this house. The reverse mortgage was due when I died or permanently moved out. The house was now worth $465,000, according to the appraisal Simone had ordered last week. After paying off the $360,000 reverse mortgage and closing costs, she'd inherit maybe $85,000 to $90,000. Not the $500,000 she thought she was getting. I hadn't told her yet. Hadn't explained that the money she assumed was hers had already been spent on her. On that Wharton degree, she used to look down on her welding mother. But Simone had her own financial problems she wasn't sharing either. I found out by accident when mail came to the house in her name. Student loan statements. She owed $225,000 at 7.5% interest. Her monthly payment was $2,640. Her consulting job at Morrison Strategic Group paid $92,000 a year. After taxes, she was taking home maybe $5,200 a month. Half of that went to student loans before she paid for anything else. She was drowning. Living with me wasn't about saving money. It was about survival. But Derek didn't know that. Derek thought she came from a family with assets, with money, with the kind of background that matched his investment banker's salary. Simone was performing wealth she didn't have, and the only way to make it real was to inherit this house, sell it, and finally have some breathing room. Except the house she thought was worth $465,000 would net her maybe $85,000 after the reverse mortgage. And she had no idea. The week after Raymond's funeral, Simone started bringing people by to look at the house. A real estate agent named Melissa Park, who specialized in estate sales. "Your mother will want to downsize anyway," Melissa told Simone in the living room while I was supposedly out of earshot in the kitchen. "Women her age don't need this much space. We can find her a nice senior apartment, something manageable." A senior apartment. At 60 years old. Like I was already halfway to a nursing home. Then came the contractor, Elite Home Renovations. The guy walked through every room with Simone, talking about opening up walls, modernizing the kitchen, converting my garage workshop into what he called a lifestyle space. "What's in here now?" he asked, looking at my welding booth. "Just my mom's old equipment," Simone said. "We'll be clearing all that out." The contractor nodded. "Good bones in this space. With the right updates, you could turn this into a serious home gym or maybe a home office. Really add value." They were standing in the space where Raymond had taught me advanced TIG welding techniques on weekends, where I'd designed the fixture that paid for Simone's education, where I'd spent 30 years solving problems that kept assembly lines running and families fed, and they were calling it wasted space. That night, Derek came over for dinner. I'd made pot roast, Raymond's favorite. Simone barely touched it, too busy making sure Derek was impressed with the house's potential. "So Simone tells me you're planning to sell," Derek said, trying to make conversation. "Simone's planning to sell," I corrected, "after I move out." "Right, of course. And you'll be, what, getting a condo somewhere?" "Haven't decided yet." Simone jumped in. "Mom'll be fine. She's got her pension, and honestly, this house is too much for her to maintain anyway. The yard alone is ridiculous for one person." The yard where Raymond planted rose bushes on our 20th anniversary. Where Simone learned to ride her bike. Where we'd had barbecues with the Union families every summer for 25 years. Too much for one person. After dinner, I heard them in the living room. Simone was showing Derek the appraisal. $465,000, she said. "After we sell, I can finally pay off a chunk of these loans, and we can start thinking about our future seriously." Our future. She'd been dating Derek for 9 months, already planning a future funded by the house her father died working to protect. Derek's voice was enthusiastic. "That's amazing, babe. I was worried about the debt situation, but if you're coming into this kind of money, that changes everything. We could even think about buying something together. Get you out of that consulting grind." They had it all planned. My exit, their upgrade, the erasure of everything Raymond and I built. What they didn't have planned for was the conversation I'd had that afternoon with Janet Wilson, our family attorney. The conversation about will number 2, the one Raymond had created 6 months before he died, the one with conditions that Simone hadn't seen yet. "Your husband was very specific about his requirements," Janet had told me. "He wanted to make sure Simone understood the value of the life you'd built together, the value of working with your hands, the value of skills that can't be taught in business school." "When do we tell her?" I'd asked. "Whenever you're ready, Yvonne. But the sooner, the better. She needs to understand what she's really inheriting and what she has to do to earn it." I watched Simone and Derek making plans in my living room, underneath the spot where our family portrait used to hang. I thought about Raymond's hands, scarred from years of truck driving. My hands, permanently marked with small burn scars from welding. And Simone's hands, soft and smooth, manicured weekly, never dirty, never calloused, never used for anything harder than typing on a laptop. Tomorrow, Janet Wilson would be coming by with documents Simone needed to see. Will number 2, the one that explained what Raymond really wanted for his daughter, and why inheriting this house wouldn't be as simple as signing papers and calling movers. Tomorrow, Simone's careful plans were going to fall apart. And I was going to watch it happen with the same calm I'd learned welding for 38 years. Because when you work with molten metal and high voltage, you learn one important lesson. Sometimes you have to let things get very hot before they can be properly shaped into something useful. Janet Wilson arrived at 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning with a leather folder and an expression that told me she'd done this kind of conversation before. Simone was in the kitchen on a video call with Morrison Strategic, talking about quarterly projections and client deliverables. She was wearing a $200 blouse she'd bought to impress Derek's parents at dinner last week, the price tag still in my mind because I'd seen the credit card statement on the counter. "Simone, honey, can you come in here?" I called out. "Janet needs to talk to us about your father's estate." Simone ended her call and walked into the living room with that confident stride she'd developed at Wharton, the one that said she belonged in boardrooms and corner offices. She saw Janet and smiled. "Is this about finalizing the property transfer? I've already got the real estate agent on standby." Janet didn't smile back. "Simone, your mother asked me to come by because there's a second will, one your father created 6 months before he passed away." The confidence flickered. "What do you mean, a second will?" "We already did the reading. The house goes to me." "The first will, yes. But your father created an updated version that supersedes it. This one has specific conditions attached to the inheritance." Janet opened her folder and pulled out documents. "Your father was very clear about his intentions. He wanted to make sure you understood the value of the skills and sacrifices that built this family's life." Simone took the papers, her eyes scanning quickly. I watched her face change as she read. Confusion first, then disbelief. Then something that looked like rage building behind her carefully maintained professional composure. "This says I have to work in Mom's garage for 12 months. Her voice was tight. 12 months of manual labor, learning welding, building something functional. And I don't inherit until I complete an AWS Level 1 certification and create a project that demonstrates I understand the craft." "That's correct," Janet said calmly. "Your father believed that before you inherited the value of his and your mother's life's work, you should understand what that work actually entailed. Not theoretically, not from a business case study, but with your hands." "This is insane." Simone looked at me. "You put him up to this, didn't you? This is your way of punishing me for being successful, for getting out." "I didn't put Raymond up to anything," I said quietly. "He made this decision on his own after watching how you treated us during your last year at Wharton. How you stopped coming home for holidays because you were networking. How you started introducing us as my parents who work in automotive, like it was something to apologize for. So this is revenge. You're making me waste a year of my career, a year of my life, to prove some point about blue-collar nobility." Janet interrupted. "Simone, your father gave you an alternative. If you don't wish to complete the requirements, the house will be sold, and the proceeds after the reverse mortgage payoff will go to establishing trade school scholarships in his name. You won't inherit, but you also won't be obligated to do the work." "Reverse mortgage?" Simone's face went pale. "What reverse mortgage?" The room went very quiet. Janet looked at me. I'd known this moment was coming, but that didn't make it easier. "The reverse mortgage your father and I took out 3 years ago," I said, "to pay for your Wharton tuition." "How much?" $36万美元. Simone sat down hard on the couch. "The house is worth $465,000. You're telling me there's a $360,000 loan against it?" "That's correct. After closing costs and fees, the net inheritance is approximately $85,000 to $90,000, not the $500,000 you were planning on." I watched my daughter do the math, watched her realize that her escape plan, her debt solution, her future with Derek, all of it was built on numbers that didn't exist. The $465,000 house was really just $85,000 after the loan her education had created. "You spent my inheritance on my education," she said slowly. We spent our home equity on your future, I corrected. Raymond believed you'd be successful enough to make it worth it. Believed you'd come back and take care of us, like he took care of his parents. But you came back and called his workshop junk. Simone was breathing fast now, the kind of panic I recognized from her childhood when things didn't go according to plan. So my options are work in your garage for a year like some kind of apprentice, or walk away with $85,000 that won't even pay off half my student loans? Or, Janet said carefully, you could see this as an opportunity. 12 months learning a skilled trade, real-world experience that might actually be valuable in consulting. Understanding how things are made, how production works, how skilled labor thinks and operates. That's knowledge most Wharton MBAs never get. I don't want to be a welder. I didn't spend $225,000 on business school to learn welding. You spent $225,000 of borrowed money, I said, and $180,000 of our home equity. That's $405,000 total to get you that Wharton MBA. And what you learned there apparently didn't include gratitude, humility, or respect for the people who sacrificed everything to give you opportunities they never had. Simone stood up, her hands shaking. I need to call Derek. Derek doesn't get a vote in this, Janet said firmly. This is between you, your mother, and your father's wishes. My father's dead. He doesn't get to control my life from the grave. The words hit me like a physical blow. Janet's face went hard. Your father spent his last months alive worried about you, worried that you'd become someone who measured success only in salary and status, someone who'd forgotten where she came from. He created this requirement because he loved you, Simone. He wanted you to understand what real wealth looks like. It's not a number in a bank account. It's the skill in your hands and the character to use it well. Simone grabbed the will documents. How long do I have to decide? 90 days, Janet said. After that, if you haven't begun the program, the alternative clause activates and the house goes to sale for the scholarship fund. 90 days. Simone laughed, but there was no humor in it. 90 days to decide if I'm going to throw away a year of my career to satisfy my dead father's blue-collar fantasy. She walked out, leaving Janet and me sitting in the living room. I heard her car start, heard her drive away too fast, heard the silence that followed. She'll come around, Janet said, but she didn't sound convinced. Maybe. Or maybe she'll take the $85,000 and walk away, cut me out of her life completely. Would that be worse than watching her become someone Raymond wouldn't recognize? I didn't have an answer for that. All I knew was that in 90 days, I'd either have my daughter back in some form, or I'd lose her completely. And unlike welding, where you could always reheat the metal and try again, some things once broken couldn't be fixed. Simone didn't come home that night. Or the next. She was staying at Derek's place in Midtown, avoiding me, avoiding the garage, avoiding the reality that her inheritance wasn't what she thought it was. I knew because Derek called on Thursday afternoon, and his tone told me everything I needed to know about how that conversation was going. Mrs. Wallace, this is Derek Chen, Simone's boyfriend. I know who you are, Derek. Right. Look, I'm calling because Simone is really struggling with this situation. This will, the requirements, it's putting her in an impossible position professionally. She's up for promotion at Morrison Strategic, and taking a year off to learn welding would basically end her career trajectory. Her father didn't ask her to quit her job. He asked her to learn a skill. With all due respect, a skill she doesn't need. Simone has a Wharton MBA. She's building a career in strategic consulting. What's she going to do with welding certification? It's not exactly relevant to her field. I almost laughed. Derek, do you know what Simone's consulting firm does? They advise companies on operational efficiency and strategic positioning. And do any of those companies actually make things, build things, produce physical products? Silence on the other end. Simone's been consulting for automotive suppliers for the past 8 months, I continued. telling them how to optimize their production processes, and she's never once set foot on a factory floor, never watched a production line run, never understood how the things she's optimizing actually work in the real world. Her father thought maybe she should learn. "Mrs. Wallace, I think you're missing the bigger picture here. Simone and I are building a life together. We're talking about marriage, maybe buying a place. This inheritance was supposed to be part of our financial planning. Now you're telling her it's mostly gone, and what's left is conditional on a year of manual labor. That's not fair to either of us." "Fair," I repeated. "You want to talk about fair?" Simone's father drove trucks for 32 years, 16-hour days. Irregular hours. He missed her school plays, her graduations, her track meets because he was on the road, making sure we could pay the mortgage and save for her education. I worked swing shifts at the Ford supplier plant for 38 years. Got called in on holidays. Breathed metal fumes. Burned my hands. Ruined my knees standing on concrete floors. All so Simone could go to Howard and then Wharton, and never have to worry about money the way we did. "I understand you sacrificed a lot." "No, Derek, I don't think you do, because if you did, you wouldn't be calling me trying to negotiate around my dead husband's last wishes so you and Simone can buy a condo." I heard him take a breath. "Look, Simone told me about the reverse mortgage, about how you spent the home equity on her tuition. That was your choice. You can't hold that over her now." "I'm not holding anything over her. The choice is entirely hers. Work with me for 12 months and inherit, or walk away with $85,000 and whatever lessons Wharton taught her. Nobody's forcing her to do anything. Except her father is manipulating her from beyond the grave." That made me angry. Her father loved her. He saw what she was becoming, and he tried to course correct before it was too late. Before she turned into someone who measures people by their degrees instead of their character. "Are you saying I measure people by their degrees?" "I'm saying you called my life's work manual labor type stuff the first time you came to my house. I'm saying you didn't ask me a single question about my career, my skills, or my experience. You saw blue collar and decided you knew everything you needed to know, just like Simone did." Derek was quiet for a moment. Then, "Simone says if she does this, if she takes a year off to work in your garage, Morrison Strategic won't hold her position. She'll have to reapply. Start over. Then maybe Morrison Strategic isn't the right place for her." Easy for you to say. You're not the one with $225,000 in student loans. No, I'm the one who took out $360,000 against my house so she could get those loans in the first place. I think I've earned the right to have an opinion about what she does next." He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in my garage workshop, surrounded by the tools and equipment that had defined my adult life, and thought about Raymond. About the conversations we'd had in the months before he died. "She's lost, Yvonne," he'd said one night, sitting in this same spot, watching me work on a steel sculpture for the church fundraiser. "Our baby girl is lost. She thinks success means getting as far from us as possible. She's just young, finding her way. She's ashamed of us. I see it in how she talks about our work, how she introduces us to her friends, like we're something she had to overcome, instead of the foundation she's built on." Raymond had been diagnosed with heart problems the year before. The doctors said stress and lifestyle, all those years of irregular hours and poor diet on the road, he knew his time was limited. "I want to leave her something more than money," he'd said. "I want to leave her understanding, knowledge, connection to where she came from. She might not want it, baby. Then she doesn't get the money either. I'm not leaving $85,000 to someone who thinks it's shameful that her parents worked with their hands. If she can't respect the work, she doesn't deserve the inheritance." I'd argued with him about it, told him it was too controlling, too harsh, but Raymond was adamant. "This isn't punishment, Yvonne. This is rescue. I'm trying to save our daughter from becoming someone neither of us would recognize." Now, 3 years after his death, I was watching his rescue mission play out, and I wasn't sure if it was working or if we'd just pushed Simone further away. My phone buzzed. A text from Simone. Need to talk. Coming by tomorrow morning. Just those 6 words. No emotion, no hint of what she'd decided. I texted back a simple okay and went back to my workbench. Tomorrow, I'd find out if my daughter was willing to learn the lessons her father tried to teach, or if she'd take the money and walk away from everything Raymond and I had built, including the chance to understand why it mattered. The welding torch sat on my bench, silent and cold. Tomorrow it might roar to life again with Simone learning to control the flame, or it might stay quiet, gathering dust in a workshop that would soon belong to someone else. Either way, Raymond's last lesson was about to be delivered. Whether Simone was ready to learn it was entirely up to her. Simone arrived at 9 a.m. Friday morning, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her Wharton-polished appearance was cracking. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The $200 blouse replaced with a Howard University sweatshirt I remembered buying her freshman year. She looked more like my daughter than she had in years. "I've been doing the math," she said, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome in her own childhood home. 3 days of spreadsheets, financial projections, scenario planning, all the tools they taught me at Wharton. And what did the spreadsheets tell you? That I'm screwed either way. She came inside, dropped her bag on the floor. If I take the $85,000 and walk away, I can pay off maybe 40% of my student loans. I'll still owe $135,000. At my current salary, that's another 12 years of payments. Meanwhile, Derek is making noises about engagement, and I can't even afford to split rent on a decent apartment. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same spot where Raymond and I had decided to take out the reverse mortgage. If I do Dad's program, I lose a year of career momentum. Morrison Strategic won't hold my position. I'd have to start over somewhere else, probably at a lower salary. Derek's already pulling back. He called it reassessing our timeline, but what he means is he's not interested in being with someone who's learning to weld instead of climbing the corporate ladder. So Derek's opinion matters more than your own judgment? Derek represents the life I'm supposed to be building, the life all that education was supposed to give me. Partner at a consulting firm. 6-figure salary. The kind of success that justifies $405,000 in education costs. And is that the life you actually want? Or just the life you think you're supposed to want? Simone looked at me for a long moment. "I don't know anymore, Mom. I thought I knew. Wharton was supposed to be the answer. The MBA was supposed to open doors, but all it did was open debt. I'm 32 years old, living with my mother, drowning in loans, dating a man who's already looking for exits because my inheritance isn't big enough. This isn't what success is supposed to look like. What did you come here to tell me, Simone?" "That I'll do it. The program, the 12 months, the welding certification, all of it." She said it like she was surrendering, not choosing. "Not because I believe in Dad's blue-collar wisdom. Not because I think manual labor is going to teach me anything Wharton didn't. But because $85,000 isn't enough to solve my problems, and at least this way I inherit the full value of the house once you're gone." "Once I'm gone," I repeated. "That's your timeline? Wait for me to die?" "That's how inheritance works, Mom. You're 60. Statistically, I've got another 20, maybe 25 years. If I do this program, I inherit when the time comes. If I don't, I get $85,000 now and nothing later." From a purely financial perspective, it makes sense to do the work. Everything she was saying was technically correct. Emotionally bankrupt, but financially logical. This was Wharton talking. This was the daughter who'd learned to reduce everything to numbers and projections. "There's something you need to understand about your father's will," I said carefully. "The 12-month program isn't just a requirement, it's an evaluation. At the end of the year, there's a review board. 3 people who'll assess whether you actually learned anything or just went through the motions. A review board? Simone's face hardened. Dad made me accountable to strangers? Not strangers. Mike Anderson from the union. Dr. Patricia Brown, she's an executive at a Detroit automotive supplier who knew your father, and Janet Wilson, our family attorney. They'll evaluate your work, your attitude, your understanding of what you learned. If they determine you didn't genuinely engage with the process, you don't inherit. The house gets sold for the scholarship fund regardless. So even if I do the 12 months, I might still lose everything? If you do it with the attitude you just showed me, where you're just checking boxes and counting down days until I die, yes, you'll lose everything, because that's not learning. That's performing. And your father knew the difference. Simone stood up, pacing the kitchen. This is impossible. You're asking me to give up a year of my life, possibly my relationship, definitely my career momentum, and at the end of it, I still might not inherit? How is that fair? Your father died at 58 years old. He worked himself to death driving trucks so you could have opportunities. He didn't get fairness. He got early heart disease and a funeral. Maybe stop thinking about what's fair to you and start thinking about what he was trying to give you. What? Character? Work ethic? Blue-collar nobility? I don't need Dad's lessons in humility. I need financial stability. No, Simone, you need to understand where you came from before you can figure out where you're going. That's what Raymond was trying to teach you. She grabbed her bag. I need time to think about this. The evaluation board changes everything. You have 86 days left to decide. After that, the house goes to sale. And what do you want, Mom? Do you want me to do this program? Or would you rather I walk away and you keep living here until you die? It was a fair question, and I didn't have a simple answer. Part of me wanted my daughter back in my garage, learning the skills that had defined my life, connecting to her father's memory through the work. Part of me knew that forcing someone to learn respect rarely works. And part of me was tired of being caught between my dead husband's wishes and my living daughter's resentment. I want you to want to understand, I said finally. I want you to be curious about what your father and I did for 40 years. I want you to ask questions instead of making assumptions. But if you're only here for the money, if you're going to spend 12 months resenting me and counting down days, then maybe it's better if you take the $85,000 and we both move on with our lives. Is that what you really want? To lose me over this? I already lost you, Simone. You've been gone since Wharton. This program is your father's way of trying to bring you back. Whether it works is up to you. She left without another word. I watched her drive away for the second time that week, wondering if she'd come back at all. That afternoon, Derek called again. His tone was different this time. Colder, more final. Simone told me about the evaluation board, about how even doing the program doesn't guarantee inheritance. That's correct. Then I'm out, Mrs. Wallace. I'm not waiting around for a year while Simone plays apprentice with uncertain outcomes. I need a partner who's stable, who has clear prospects. This situation is too complicated. Then you were never the right partner for her in the first place. Maybe not. But neither are you. You and your dead husband are putting her through some kind of test that has nothing to do with her actual life. You're holding money hostage to teach lessons she doesn't need. Lessons she doesn't need, I repeated. That's the whole problem, Derek. Everyone thinks they don't need to understand how things are actually made until they're consulting on manufacturing efficiency without ever seeing a factory floor. Until they're advising on production optimization without understanding what production actually requires. Your generation thinks knowledge comes from PowerPoint and Excel. Raymond was trying to teach her it comes from your hands. Well, good luck with that. I'm done. He hung up. An hour later, Simone called. She was crying, something I hadn't heard since she was a teenager. Derek broke up with me. Said the inheritance situation was too messy. I'm sorry, baby. He said I had to choose between him and Dad's program, between our future together and some fantasy about blue-collar nobility. "And what did you say?" Long pause. Then, quietly, I told him I'd already lost too much. I couldn't lose the last thing Dad left me too. "So, you're doing the program?" "I don't know, Mom. I don't know anything anymore. I just know I'm 32, single, in debt, and my only option is learning to weld in my dead father's garage. This isn't how my life was supposed to go." "No," I agreed. "But maybe it's how it needed to go." Simone started the program the following Monday. Not because she wanted to, not because she believed in it, but because she'd run out of other options. She showed up at 8 a.m., wearing old jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back, her face set in resignation. "I need steel-toed boots," she said, "and safety glasses, and whatever else OSHA requires. We'll get them today. But first, I want to show you something." I led her to my workbench where I'd laid out the patent documents from 1999. The welding fixture design that had paid for her education. Detailed technical drawings, specifications, photographs of the prototype. "This is what funded your Wharton tuition. Not all of it, but the down payment that made the rest possible. Your father and I designed this together. He understood the production problem from driving parts between plants. I understood the welding challenges from working the line. Together, we created something that Ford paid $165,000 for." Simone picked up the drawings, studying them with the analytical eye she'd developed at Wharton. "This is actually clever. The angle adjustment mechanism, the way it maintains consistent gap spacing. I can see why they bought it. Your father used to say the best inventions come from people who actually do the work, who see the problems every day, who understand what's needed because they're the ones needing it. Is that what this year is supposed to teach me? To see problems I don't actually have? No, it's supposed to teach you to respect the people who do have them, and to understand that intelligence isn't the same as education." We spent that first week on safety training and basic tool familiarization. Simone was frustrated by the pace, used to information coming faster, more efficiently. She wanted to skip ahead, to understand welding theoretically before doing it practically. "That's not how this works," I told her on Wednesday when she asked if she could watch YouTube videos instead of practicing bead runs. "You can't learn welding from a screen. You have to feel the heat, control the puddle, understand the metal by working with it. This is incredibly inefficient. I could learn the theory in a day and then apply it. The theory without the practice is useless. That's the whole point." By Friday, she'd made her first acceptable bead on a practice plate. It wasn't pretty, but it was structurally sound. She stared at it like she'd discovered something unexpected. "I actually made that," she said quietly. "You did. With my hands. With metal and electricity and skill. Welcome to how your parents spent 40 years. That weekend, Simone was scheduled to give a presentation at Morrison Strategic, a consulting proposal for Midwest Automotive Solutions, one of her key clients. She'd been working on it for weeks before Raymond's will complicated everything. I didn't expect to hear about it until she mentioned it Monday morning. The presentation was Friday afternoon. Remember? The automotive supplier consulting pitch? How'd it go? Her face was difficult to read. I mentioned something I shouldn't have. About understanding production processes from a worker perspective. About the value of hands-on knowledge. My supervisor, Margaret, thought I was trying to be folksy, connecting with the blue-collar client. And the client's VP of operations asked if I had production floor experience. I said my mother had 38 years as a certified welder. He asked her name. Something in my stomach tightened. "What did you say?" I told him. "Yvonne Wallace." "And Mom," his face changed. He said, "The Yvonne Wallace? The fixture designer from the Ford contract in 1999? I sat down. I hadn't heard that name used that way in 25 years. He said, "You're in textbooks, Mom. Case studies about worker-driven innovation. That fixture you designed changed industry standards for aluminum body panel assembly. It's taught in manufacturing engineering courses as an example of ground-level problem solving." I didn't know that. Neither did I, because you never told me. You never said you were significant. You just said you were a welder. I was a welder who solved a problem. You were an innovator who changed an industry. And I introduced you to my boyfriend as someone who did manual labor type stuff. Simone's voice cracked. The VP asked if you'd be willing to consult on their production optimization project. He said they'd pay $15,000 for a week of your time reviewing their assembly processes. That's not my work anymore. Mom, I've been consulting for automotive suppliers for 8 months, telling them how to improve efficiency. And I didn't know that my own mother was an industry-recognized expert whose designs are in textbooks. How did I not know that? Because you never asked. You assumed you knew what my career was. Blue collar, manual labor, something to escape from. She was quiet for a long time. Then, Dad knew this would happen, didn't he? He knew that if I actually engaged with the work, if I stopped being ashamed long enough to learn, I'd discover who you really were. Your father knew a lot of things, including that pride comes before understanding, and that you were so proud of your MBA you couldn't see what was right in front of you. Simone looked at her hands, still soft and unmarked. I have so much to learn. Yes, I said. You do. But at least now you know that you don't know. That's the first step. The next 4 months changed something in Simone. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, the way metal changes when you heat it gradually instead of hitting it with a torch all at once. She showed up every morning at 7 a.m. before her consulting work started, stayed until 9 p.m. some nights, practicing bead control, studying metallurgy, asking questions I never thought I'd hear from her. Why does aluminum require different technique than steel? How do you know when penetration is sufficient without overwelding? What's the relationship between amperage and material thickness? Questions that showed she was thinking, not just going through motions. By month 3, she'd completed her AWS Level 1 written exam, scored 94%. By month 4, she was working on her practical certification project, a steel frame structure that required multiple joint types and positions. But the real test came in June, 5 months into the program, when Morrison Strategic assigned her to a new client. Precision Components Detroit, a Tier 2 automotive supplier struggling with quality control issues in their welded assemblies. The kind of project Simone would have approached from spreadsheets and process flow diagrams 6 months ago. Instead, she asked if she could bring me. "You want me to come to your client site?" I was surprised. The client's having welding defects, porosity in their aluminum assemblies. Their engineers can't figure out why. I could consult from theory, or I could bring someone who actually knows what causes porosity in aluminum welds. "Simone, that's your project, your client. And I'm smart enough to know when I need expertise I don't have. That's what they should have taught us at Wharton but didn't, when to ask for help." We visited Precision Components on a Thursday afternoon. The plant manager, Tom Richardson, was skeptical when Simone introduced me. "Your mother's a consultant too?" "My mother's a certified TIG welder with 38 years experience. She's here to look at your welding operation." Tom's skepticism increased. With respect, we've already had 3 engineering consultants review our processes. What's a retired welder going to see that they missed? "Let her look," Simone said with confidence I'd never heard from her before. "If she can't find the problem, you don't pay anything extra." I spent 2 hours on the production floor, watched the welders work, checked their equipment settings, examined the defective parts under magnification, talked to the welders themselves, not just the engineers. By the end, I knew exactly what the problem was. "Your argon gas is contaminated," I told Tom in his office. "You're getting moisture in your shielding gas, probably from your storage tanks. That's causing the porosity. Your engineers were adjusting amperage and travel speed trying to compensate, but that's not the issue. It's your gas supply." Tom checked with his maintenance team. The argon storage tanks hadn't been serviced in 18 months. Moisture had accumulated. They cleaned the system, replaced the gas, and the porosity disappeared. "How much do I owe you?" Tom asked. "You don't owe me anything, but if you want to make it right, hire my daughter's firm to do a complete facility review. Not just welding, everything, because if your gas supply was neglected this long, there are probably other maintenance issues hiding in your systems." Tom looked at Simone. "Your mother just earned you a $180,000 consulting contract." On the drive home, Simone was quiet. Then, "You could have charged him $15,000 for that consultation. Maybe more. Why didn't you?" "Because this was your client, your project, your opportunity to show Morrison Strategic what you're capable of when you understand production from the ground up. I'm not taking that from you. But you solved the problem. You should be compensated." I was compensated. I got to watch my daughter respect what I do instead of being ashamed of it. That's worth more than $15,000. She pulled over to the side of the road, put the car in park, and cried. Not delicate tears, real crying, the kind that's been held back too long. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything, for being ashamed, for calling your work junk, for introducing you like you were something I had to apologize for. Dad was right. I needed this year. I needed to understand what I'd been too proud to see." I held my daughter while she cried in a way I hadn't since she was a child. When she finally stopped, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "The evaluation board. When do they review my progress?" "Next month." "But Simone, you need to understand something. Passing the board isn't about perfect welds or technical knowledge. It's about whether you've changed. Whether you understand now what you didn't understand before." "Do you think I've changed?" "I think you're asking different questions than you did 5 months ago. I think you brought me to your client site instead of hiding me from them. I think you cried just now because you finally understand what you lost and what you're getting back. So yes, I think you've changed. What if the board doesn't agree? Then we deal with that when it happens. But for now, you've got 4 more months of learning ahead of you and a welding certification project to finish. Focus on that." She put the car back in gear. As we drove home, I noticed her hands on the steering wheel. They were rougher now, calloused from months of holding welding torches and grinding metal. The manicured perfection was gone, replaced by the marked hands of someone who'd actually built something. They looked like my hands, like Raymond's hands, like the hands of someone who'd finally learned that real value isn't measured in degrees or salary. It's measured in skill, character, and the willingness to learn from people you once thought you were better than. The evaluation board convened on a cold December morning, 11 months into Simone's program. Janet Wilson had reserved the conference room at her law office, Dr. Seminating. Patricia Brown flew in from her executive position at Tier 1 Automotive. Mike Anderson took the day off from the Union Hall. They sat across the table from Simone, who'd brought her certification portfolio, her completed welding project, and 11 months of documentation. I wasn't allowed in the room. This was Simone's evaluation, not mine. I sat in the waiting area outside Janet's office, drinking bad coffee and thinking about Raymond. About whether this was what he'd really wanted, or if we'd just put our daughter through an elaborate test that proved nothing. The evaluation lasted 4 hours. Through the glass door, I could see Patricia examining Simone's welds, Mike asking questions, Janet taking notes, Simone answering, demonstrating, explaining. She looked confident in a way I'd never seen. Not Wharton confident. Something deeper, something earned. When they finally opened the door, Janet called me in. "Yvonne, we'd like you to hear this," she said. I sat down next to Simone. Her hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from exhaustion. From 11 months of proving herself to people who knew her father. Patricia spoke first. Simone, your technical work is solid. AWS Level 1 certification achieved with high marks. Your project demonstrates competency across multiple welding positions and joint configurations. From a skills perspective, you've met the requirements. But, Mike Anderson added, Raymond's will wasn't about skills. It was about understanding, about respect, about whether you'd learn to value what your parents built. He pulled out a document. 3 weeks ago, I got a call from Tom Richardson at Precision Components. He told me about how you brought your mother to solve their welding defects. How you could have taken credit but didn't. How you secured a $180,000 consulting contract by respecting your mother's expertise instead of hiding it. Simone nodded. It was the right thing to do. That's the point, Patricia said. You did it because it was right, not because someone was watching. That's character. That's what Raymond was looking for. Janet opened another folder. I also received documentation about your work at Morrison Strategic over the past 11 months. Your supervisor, Margaret Wheeler, wrote a letter. Would you like me to read it? Yes, Simone said quietly. Janet read, Simone Wallace has transformed her approach to consulting. Where she once relied solely on business frameworks and data analysis, she now combines analytical thinking with practical production knowledge. Her client outcomes have improved significantly because she understands the reality of manufacturing, not just the theory. She asks better questions. She provides more implementable solutions. She respects the workers who will execute her recommendations. Frankly, she's become the consultant I'd hoped she'd be when we hired her. There's more, Mike said. I visited the garage workshop last week while you were at work. Talked to your mom about your progress. Asked her directly if she thought you'd changed or if you were just performing to inherit. He looked at me. Yvonne, what did you tell me? I took a breath. I told Mike that 11 months ago, my daughter was ashamed of where she came from, that she called my life's work junk, that she removed family photos because we didn't fit her professional image. I looked at Simone. I told him that the woman who did those things isn't the woman sitting here today, that you ask questions now instead of making assumptions, that you value skills over credentials, that you brought me to your workplace instead of hiding me from it. But, I continued, I also told Mike something else. I told him that Raymond's will was wrong. The room went silent. Simone's eyes went wide. Wrong how? Janet asked carefully. Wrong because it tried to control Simone from the grave. Wrong because it used inheritance as a weapon to force learning. Wrong because love shouldn't come with conditions and tests and evaluation boards. I stood up. Raymond was my husband, and I loved him. But this will, this whole program, it's not about education. It's about control. And I won't be part of it anymore. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying that regardless of what this board decides, I'm not enforcing Raymond's conditions. The house is mine until I die, and when that happens, you inherit, period. No tests. No requirements. No evaluation. Patricia leaned forward. Yvonne, we've spent 11 months evaluating Simone's progress. Are you invalidating that work? I'm saying my daughter shouldn't have to prove her worth to inherit from her mother. She's already proven it by showing up every morning for 11 months, by learning instead of resenting, by changing because she chose to, not because money forced her to. Mike smiled. That's what Raymond wanted to hear. What? Janet opened one final document. Raymond's will has a clause we didn't tell you about, either of you. It says if at any point during the evaluation you refuse to enforce the conditions because you believe they're wrong, then Simone inherits immediately and completely. No board review required. I stared at the document. He planned this? He planned for the possibility that love would override control, that you'd choose your daughter over his conditions, that Simone would change not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Janet smiled. You both passed his real test, the one about choosing people over money, about choosing growth over performance, about choosing love over conditions. Simone was crying, so was I. Across the table, Patricia and Mike were both grinning like they'd been in on the secret the whole time. So I inherit? Simone asked. You inherit, Janet confirmed. The house, with its $360,000 reverse mortgage still attached, net equity of approximately $90,000 after your mother's passing. No conditions, no requirements. Just family. $90,000, Simone repeated. That's it? That's it, I said. Your father's real gift wasn't money. It was 11 months of learning who you really are and what actually matters. She looked at her calloused hands, then at me. Can I keep working in the garage? Even though I don't have to anymore? Baby girl, that garage has always been yours. The question is whether you want it. I do, she said. Not for inheritance. For me. That was the answer Raymond had been hoping for all along. 6 months after the evaluation, Simone and I were working side by side in the garage on a Saturday morning. She was fabricating a custom bracket for a client project. I was teaching her advanced TIG techniques for stainless steel. The radio played old Motown, the same station Raymond used to listen to when he worked out here. Morrison Strategic had promoted Simone to senior consultant with a specialty in manufacturing operations. Her salary jumped to $118,000. More importantly, her work had meaning now. She wasn't just analyzing spreadsheets, she was solving real problems for real people doing real work. Mom, I need to tell you something, she said, shutting off her welder. What's that? I paid off $80,000 of my student loans last month, used my promotion bonus and the consulting fees from the Precision Components contract. That's wonderful, baby. I've still got $145,000 to go. At my current payment rate, that's another 8 years. She pulled off her welding helmet. I was thinking about the house, about the equity. My stomach tightened. Here it was, the conversation I'd been dreading. Now that she knew the inheritance was only $90,000, now that she'd learned the lessons and earned her promotion, maybe she was ready to cash out after all. What about the house? I don't want you to sell it. I don't want the equity. I want you to live here until you're 100 years old, and then I want to inherit it with its memories intact. She wiped metal dust from her hands. The money doesn't matter anymore, Mom. What matters is that this is where Dad taught you to weld. Where you designed the fixture that changed an industry. Where you taught me that intelligence and education aren't the same thing. Simone, that $90,000 could pay off more than half your remaining loans. And then what? I'd have less debt, but I'd have lost the place where I finally learned who I am. That's not a trade I'm willing to make. She started cleaning her workspace, the careful, methodical process I'd taught her. Besides, I've been thinking about Dad's scholarship fund, the one that would have gotten the money if I'd failed the evaluation. What about it? I want to fund it anyway, not with the house, with earnings. I talked to Janet about setting up a foundation, the Raymond Wallace Trade Skills Scholarship, for kids who want to learn welding, machining, skilled trades but can't afford the certification programs. Baby, that's beautiful. But that's expensive. How would you fund it? I've been doing consulting on the side. Using what you taught me about production processes, I made $35,000 last quarter just from weekend projects. I'm putting half of it into the scholarship fund, the other half toward my loans. I had to sit down. This was my daughter, the same woman who'd handed me eviction papers a year ago, who'd called my life's work junk, who'd been ashamed to introduce me to her boyfriend. Your father would be so proud of you. I hope so. I'm also starting a YouTube channel, teaching basic welding skills to beginners. I figure if I can learn at 32 with a Wharton MBA and soft hands, anyone can learn. The first video goes live next week. What's it called? Blue Collar MBA. Teaching business school graduates what they should have learned in the first place. How things are actually made. How to respect the people who make them. How to understand production before you consult on it. Over the next months, Simone's channel grew. Not viral, but steady. 2,000 subscribers became 5,000, became 12,000. She posted videos about welding basics, manufacturing processes, and interviews with skilled tradespeople, including a 3-part series on women in trades, featuring me talking about 38 years in automotive welding. The comments section filled with business school graduates who'd never set foot on a factory floor, with consultants who'd realized they were advising on processes they didn't understand. With young people considering trade school, instead of expensive MBAs, "You're teaching what Raymond wanted you to learn," I told her after her channel hit 15,000 subscribers. "I'm teaching what you taught me, that there's dignity in skilled work, that education comes in many forms, that the hands that build things deserve the same respect as the minds that theorize about them." One evening in early fall, Simone brought someone by the house, a woman named Lauren, a civil engineer she'd met through a client project. They'd been dating for 3 months. "Mom, this is Lauren. She designs bridges, actually builds things that hold weight and matter." Lauren shook my hand with calluses that matched mine. "Simone talks about you constantly, about what you taught her, about the fixture design. I'd love to see your workshop sometime if that's okay." We spent 2 hours in the garage, the 3 of us, talking about metallurgy and structural engineering and the satisfaction of creating things that last. Lauren understood what Derek never had. That Simone's worth wasn't measured in salary or inheritance, but in character and skill and the willingness to learn. After Lauren left, Simone helped me clean up the workshop. Dad knew, didn't he? That I needed to lose everything I thought mattered before I could find what actually matters. He knew you were lost. He just gave you a map back home. The map was you, Mom, working in this garage every day, respecting your craft, being proud of what you built instead of apologizing for it. You showed me what success actually looks like. It's not a diploma or a salary. It's coming home to work you believe in and people who respect what you do. We locked up the garage together. Inside, my welding torch sat clean and ready. Simone's torch beside it. 2 generations of skilled hands. 2 women who'd learned that the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property. It's knowledge, character, and the understanding that worth isn't measured by credentials, but by what you build with your own 2 hands. Raymond's lesson was complete, not because we passed his test, but because we learned that love doesn't need tests. Family doesn't require evaluation boards. And the best inheritance you can leave someone is the wisdom to know the difference between price and value. Some education costs $225,000 and teaches you business theory. Some education costs 12 months in a garage and teaches you who you really are. Raymond made sure Simone got both, and in the end, the one that mattered most didn't come with a diploma. It came with calloused hands, welding skills, and the knowledge that she'd earned something no university could ever provide. The respect of the woman who raised her, the understanding of the man who loved her enough to save her from herself, and the peace that comes from finally knowing where you belong. That is Yvonne Wallace's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these stories. Real question. If you were Yvonne, would you have enforced Raymond's will, made your daughter work 12 months in the garage to inherit? Or would you have done what Yvonne did and refused to use money as control? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story made you think about the difference between education and wisdom. Share it if you know someone who went to college and came back different. someone who forgot where they came from, someone who had to learn the hard way that a degree doesn't make you better than the people who raised you. Someone who discovered that the most valuable knowledge doesn't always come with a diploma. Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. And subscribe for more real stories about family, sacrifice, class struggle, and the lessons that can't be taught in business school. Real wealth isn't measured in dollars or degrees. It's measured in calloused hands, honest work, and the wisdom to know the difference between price and value. See you in the next video.